Hello and welcome to the module on conflict. In this module, what we're going to cover are all of those situations that arise in your life where you're at odds with someone else. So for example, say that you're in work and all of a sudden your boss surprises you, tells you that you've not been doing a good job and he's disappointed. How do you handle that rush of emotion? How do you get out of that in a way that's going to be both good for you, preserve your job, and make that relationship stronger? Or say that you're at work and somebody's been stealing credit for the work that you're doing. You want to confront them, but maybe you don't know how. Or this could be something that is in your friend or social circle, right? It could be a family member that you always seem to have the same argument with. I'm going to try to give you a broad framework, including mindset, strategies, tactics, that's going to go down and teach you how to deal with any kind of conflict. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get every single nuance of every single thing that's likely to happen. So what I want to cover first are the ways that I'm going to hit on these and then how you can start to apply those to the specific situations in your life. So broad strokes of what this course is going to be. It's going to start with the mindsets. And these are mindsets that I don't care where you are. They're going to help you in any sort of conflict that you have. Second thing that we're going to touch on is the strategies before you get into conflict, right? So these are things that you maybe do right now at home as you're going through this. Some of them are written out. Some of them are just thought exercises that you want to have taken care of before you're actually face to face with someone who is pissed off at you. And then the third thing that we're going to hit on is the actual tactics of conflict. And it's important to cover those first two things first because we want to avoid this and we want to go in with a good mindset. But if you do find yourself there where you're at odds with someone, we're going to cover exactly how to handle that situation, right? All the way through the resolution. And then lastly is going to be that specific nuances, right? So how do you apply that to a situation at work? And what's different about family? Or what happens when someone you don't know is bashing your perhaps unconventional lifestyle, which is something that I get all the time as someone who runs their own business. So that is the section that I envision as the one that can grow as you guys have questions. So if you have them, send them to me, and I'll continue to add new nuances to that bottom section. But without further ado, now let's get right into the mindsets that are going to underlie everything we talk about going forward. All right, we're going to start now with 5 mindsets, and some of these might be ones that you already have that you completely feel very comfortable with. Some of them might be new to you. So what I recommend doing in this section is just listening and seeing which ones you're like, yep, got that, totally down, and which ones you might be able to start incorporating starting today as you think about it. So the first one is this. Conflict sometimes needs to happen. And it's not just a bad thing that, oh God, we have to deal with conflict. It can actually be very good for relationships when it does happen. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of like middle children who are just trying to not rock the boat. And I think of my mom particularly for this. My mom is someone, she was 7 out of 10 kids, and all she ever wanted to do was not create a fuss. And that's carried on throughout her life. So now that she's working, she's a school nurse, she does a very good job, but she has issues with people that don't get dealt with. For instance, there was a new woman who came in who was the assistant nurse and was basically doing a very bad job. She was leaving early, she was being very entitled, she was slacking off on her work. And rather than talk to her about it, get it dealt with so that my mom's life got better, my mom started working more to cover up for this new woman. And on top of that, what makes things worse is that in the background of all this going, there's some office or school politics going on for this new office that's opening up. And it turns out that this woman is now jockeying amongst the people who make this decision to get this beautiful new office, while my mom, who has been there much longer, is doing much more of the work, is starting to get shafted with the crappy old office. So rather than deal with it directly, she goes behind her, she talks to the woman who she has a pre-existing relationship with, winds up getting the office, but this relationship between the two workers, my mom and this new woman, is just damaged. Because this woman sees her as stealing something that was hers. My mom sees this woman as someone who is ungrateful, entitled, doesn't work very hard. And there's just a lot of animosity in there that has never really gotten taken care of. If they had handled it early, right, if she had dealt with it, let her know her expectations for her as a worker, the ways in which she wasn't doing it, if they talked about the office, that relationship could have been preserved. And now they just kind of have this cold war going on between them every single day. And you don't want that in your life. You don't want that with your coworkers or your friends or your family. So it's really important to realize sometimes we think we're doing the right thing by not creating trouble, but what we're actually doing is we're afraid of conflict. And I want you to right now ask yourself, are there situations in your own life that you know deep down the right thing to do is address it? Maybe you just don't know how. Maybe you don't have the courage yet. Think about that. And the truth is we're going to teach you how in this, but be honest. Are there situations in your life where you're avoiding that conflict and you really ought to bring it up? We're going to cover how to next, but for the second thing that we've got is another mindset. So think on that, and I'll see you in the next video. Mindset number 2, this one is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow, and it's this. You cannot change anyone in this world. You can only filter the people that you have in your own life. Meaning that I see so many people out there who are engaged in this never-ending battle to convince someone to behave differently, right? They've got a boyfriend, he drinks, he doesn't act right when he does, and they want to convince him not to. Or they've got a sister that is inconsiderate and rude, and they want to convince her to not be that way. The truth is, you can't make anyone do anything. The most persuasive person in the world cannot force change on someone. All that they can do is lay out good reasons, be emotionally persuasive, and then at the end, ask. And that's all that you can do. I'm going to arm you with the best tools that I have to be more persuasive in that ask. But what you need to understand right now is that there is going to come a time in your life where you will not be able to persuade someone to do the thing that you feel like they need to do to continue that relationship. And the right thing to do is going to be to filter them out of your life. And this gets particularly tough when we talk about family, we talk about old friends. It's a little bit easier when we talk about strangers and people in their life, but I even know that there's some people out there that want everyone to like them, right? And they have such a difficult time dealing with the fact that they can't make people treat them right, so they accept crappy behavior in their own life rather than filter these people out. So again, think to yourself, I hope not, but is there someone in your life where you're currently engaged in the process of trying and failing to change over and over and over again? What you might do better, and though it's difficult, is to start filtering. And I'm going to talk about the nuances of family and friends. The good news is that when you get this conviction that you don't need to have this person in your life if they're going to behave this way, if they're going to treat you poorly, that makes your argument, that makes this conflict go so much better, because it is a palpable feeling when someone is truly willing to walk away. When you say, you better not drink, if you do that again, I swear to God, people know that you're not actually going to leave. But when you look at them and you go, listen, if you do that one more time, this relationship is over. You can make whatever decision you want, but if I see you drink to that level again, it's over. That is much more persuasive because your words have meaning. There's a consequence to that. And what you'll find is that you don't actually have to filter all of these people out. Many of them will be willing to change, but you need to be willing to walk if it comes to that. So that's mindset number 2. You cannot change anyone. You can only filter. Mindset number 3. This mindset is don't play to win the argument. Don't try to be right. In fact, what you should do instead is think about what you concretely want in the world. Get something specific that you would like to see changed and drive towards that. So for example, if you're having an issue with a roommate, right, and they're not cleaning the way that you'd like them to clean, this is a very common one. Think about it. What do you want? What you actually want, probably if there's dishes, is for the dishes to be clean and for you to not have to do it in the future. You want to just be taken care of. What you don't necessarily need or want, but I see a lot of people drive towards, is being right. So they'll yell at them about how they're dirty and how they always do this. And what they're driving towards is to feeling vindicated, right, strong, justified for being pissed off. But what gets lost in all of that is what they truly want, which is to not have to worry about the dishes. Quick story to drive this point home. I have a buddy who he played in a recreational basketball league, and he was out there one day. It's call your own fouls, and he was playing, and he felt like this guy was calling fouls on him that he shouldn't have been. For the record, people who were there said could have gone either way. So this guy calls 2 fouls on him, and he says that he traveled. Now, right or wrong doesn't matter. What my buddy should have wanted was to get these fouls stopped being called and probably possession of the ball, right? He's just playing a basketball game, recreation. There's no money on it. But what he got caught up instead was ego. This guy was saying that you're wrong, that you're playing poorly. So he told him to go fuck himself. And then when he went home, he went on to the Facebook group of all these people that play, and he continued to rant about how he was right and the other guy was wrong by the rule book. Now, what he got was what he wanted. He felt like he wanted to be right. He wanted to stand up for himself. He felt really freaking tough at the end of that because he told that guy to go fuck himself. What he also got was alienated from the basketball games, and he looked like a ranting, raving lunatic to everyone there, and even to people who weren't there, who didn't see the play, who were just on the Facebook group. So now he's alienated himself from this whole group of people, and all he wanted to do was play basketball. So think to yourself, in these situations, what do you really want? Because if you get caught up in this ego game of trying to be right, of trying to get the other person to acknowledge your superiority or greatness, what gets lost is the other goal. Because you can only drive towards one thing at a time. And when you're driving towards being right, what's getting lost are the actual dishes getting done. So think to yourself, before you get into any conflict, and if you find yourself in something, what concrete changes, what things would you like to see in the real world changed? Sometimes that can mean just an apology from the other person. person, but get specific. If you're just trying to feel vindicated and to vent, you are going to blow this. So do not do that. Don't play to win the argument. Mindset number 4 is to never assume, because there's oftentimes in our life we'll get information from one person that somebody else said something bad or did something bad that would affect you. And you want to, and sometimes do, go to that person and start reaming them out, because if that information is true, that's absolutely what they deserve. But guess what? They misunderstood, or they were giving you false information on purpose. There's even times when you can think that you have exactly what they said, but you've misinterpreted what they meant to get across. So I can think of a time I was talking to an internet entrepreneur, and he was asking me a lot of questions about our business. And I told him, because, why not? So I told him about how we did it. I told him about the type of customer that we work with. I told him about the most lucrative things in our business. I basically opened up the back end and showed it to him, because why not? He was doing something completely different. Well, the next thing I know, we go onto his website and I see a lot of the exact same titling that I'm seeing on our stuff, right? It's talking about charisma, confidence, got taglines that are very, very similar. And I look at this and I go, oh my God, this guy just asked me all these questions. Of course, he could have done this on his own, but he betrayed my confidence, right? He asked me all of these things and then went behind my back without saying, without asking, and is now writing basically my content on his site. So what I wanted to do was, contact and hit him up and be like, that was a massive betrayal of confidence. Do whatever you want, rip off whatever you want, but we're done. I don't want anything to do with you. But instead, chilled out, cooled down. I said, maybe there's a misunderstanding here. And Ben reached out to him. And he basically said, hey, man, what's going on? I see that you're moving into the charisma space. He said, yeah, we're doing this stuff specifically for a type of guy who's like an engineer dude. So really, we looked at your website. It didn't look like it was just for engineers. In fact, I saw a lot of things that looked like they were our website, and it made me nervous that I might start to see, our sales pages, that I might start to see our products, that I might start to see everything that we've done being sold there. And I just wanted to reach out because that was kind of my first impression. And this guy got back with a torrent of absolutely not. That was not the case. In fact, if you look here, I reference you guys. I oftentimes talk about what an impact you've had on me. I tell people to go check out your stuff. This isn't intended to be a betrayal of confidence or to compete with you in any way. In fact, I'm trying to serve a completely different niche here. And then the fact was, it was different enough. And he purposely wasn't trying to betray my confidence. He wasn't trying to extract this information out of me so that he could ruin my business. That was just my interpretation. So what I tell you all of these stories to just drive the point home. Even when it seems crystal clear, you see your work and you feel like you've been plagiarized, right? It felt very obvious at the time. There's ways that you can miss things. So always go to the source, keep an open mind, and ask questions. The other thing, this is not this particular mindset, but you'll notice when we reached out to him, we were very verbose in the things that we said. We didn't say, yo, what the hell's going on here? We said, I was nervous about this. I saw this in my first reaction. We gave him the whole litany of things that we felt. And that way we were able to communicate the entirety of our feeling. We're going to touch more on that later, but that's going to be very, very important when we get into not assuming. For now, just know this. Do not assume that you know that somebody has betrayed you, gone behind your back, or done something wrong. You need to get, not just for their sake, but for your own, their side of the story, because sometimes you can be flat out wrong. Mindset number 5, and this runs through everything we teach. Honestly, it's a mindset for just about every single module we have because it's that important. And it's this: always tell the truth, never lie. And there's a million reasons I give you this. It's great for your self-esteem. It's going to make people trust you more. But in terms of conflict, this is really important because it's easy to get tripped up on what you said last time. When you start exaggerating, the other person go, wait a second, that's not what happened. And all of a sudden, the entire case that you've built for maybe them to clean their dishes, and you go, you do it every time you do this. They go, last week I cleaned them, and you know that. Now you're arguing over this bullshit minutia rather than dealing with the real issue, which is that they oftentimes don't do the dishes and that you do them the majority of the times. So be very careful. Do not exaggerate. Do not lie. Tell the truth. It's good for you for so many reasons. And one of the biggest is this quote that I love. It's always tell the truth. That way you'll never have to remember what you said the last time. You can keep things straight in your own head when you know the only story that you have is the truth. And if you ever get tripped up and you make a mistake, you can go, oh, wait, no, I made a mistake. What I meant to say was that. I should not have said that. And you can just renounce it instantly. As long as your intent is not to lie, you're coming from a strong place. So do not lie for so many reasons. But again, it's critical for conflict. So now we're going to move into the pre-conflict section. A lot of these things, rather than mindsets that are going to underlie everything, are more exercises and kind of experiments in your brain that you can do to figure out what exactly you need to do or what you should be doing going forward. So the first one is this. We're going to try to identify if there's any conflicts that you already have in your life that you need to bring up, that you need to address with the person, kind of like my mom with the woman that she works with. So there's no mathematical formula to figuring this out, but there's a couple of questions that you can ask yourself that are going to drive this home. And the first one is this: how well do I know this person? How close are we? The truth is, the proximity of your relationship is going to make it more necessary that you bring up conflict. For instance, if I'm walking on the street and someone tells me that I'm going to hell because I'm a sinner, I'm probably going to just continue to walk by them because I don't know them, and it doesn't matter that we're at odds in our worldview. But if I have family members that believe that something that I'm doing, not going to church, is going to send me to hell, and we have that conflict going on underneath, we need to address that. And I know family can be tough, I know religion can be tough, but these are the things that need to get handled. These are the things that can tear relationships apart, even though they look like they're still together on the outside. So first question, how close is this person to you? Second question, is this something that is likely to come up again? There's a couple things in our life that they happen once. You go, why did they do that? But they've never done it before. They're probably never going to do it again. And you know what? I'll just let it slide. Not a huge deal. There's other things that repeatedly we know every single time that I lend them something, I never get it back in good condition. Or I shouldn't say every time. Oftentimes when I lend them something, it doesn't come back to me in good condition, and that continues to bother me. Is this something that is a one and done with all likelihood, or is it something that you know is going to happen over and over and over again? Third question. Are you harboring any resentment towards this person? Are you harboring resentment towards anyone in your life, particularly people who are close to you? Because that's a very good sign that there's a conflict there that you have not brought up. And I can speak to the example of my mom with the woman that she works with. There is some resentment there, right? She does not like this woman. I've never met her, but I've heard about her because she bothers my mom enough that she talks about it at home. So, are you harboring resentment? You might have an outwardly fine relationship, but if you have that resentment on the inside, it's already ruined. You might as well try to repair it by bringing this conflict to light. And then the fourth thing, this is kind of the question that really ties them all together. What would the most perfect, the bravest, the most moral, the most magnanimous version of yourself do in this situation? Would this be something that they brought up, that they dealt with, or would it be something they let slide? And there's going to be times when you go, you know what? Turn the other cheek. This isn't a big deal. I don't need to handle it. The perfect version of myself would just let it go. And there's going to be times you go, you know what? The perfect version of myself would be courageous here. They'd say it because they'd know that it was the right thing to do. Oftentimes we have a very good felt sense of what's right, but we block it with our fears. And we ask ourselves this question: what would the perfect version of myself do? The bravest, most courageous, moral, and also the most forgiving. What would that person do? That drives us towards the answer that we already know. So if you've got something in your head, you go, crap, there's something I need to handle, just a note on when to do it. If it's one of those things that you know comes up all the time, it's going to happen again, and it happens in a public situation. Maybe somebody speaks badly about you or talks down to you or makes a joke at your own expense when you're out with friends. You do not necessarily want to address this in the moment it happens. You want to take that person aside for a private bit of time that is separate from the incident and talk to them one-on-one. That's going to be the best way, and we'll talk about what to say. There's other things where you might go, you know what? I don't know if this is ever going to happen again, so I'm not going to bring it up, but if it does, I'll have to address it in the moment. And these are typically things that happen just between you two, the dishes, that kind of stuff. If it's not a social circle, there are times where you can go, hey man, you just said that. I've noticed that you're constantly, again, I'm messing this up. I noticed that you oftentimes tell me that I should do the dishes. I feel like you're not doing them as much as you should. This is something that we should talk about, right? You bring it up in the moment. The point is that depending on the situation, whether it's public, whether it's something you know is going to happen, what you're going to want to do is set aside some private time. If it's something that is private, something that might not happen again, you could just deal with it when it happens. That's the note on when to do it, and hopefully there's something that maybe you came up with, because if there is, that means that your life is going to get better once you deal with it. The second thing you want to do before conflict right now, you can write this out as an exercise, you can do it in your own head, is to create 2 buckets of people in your own life. And we all have this, we just don't necessarily make it very clear. And these are people that you have to be in a relationship with on the one hand, and people that you choose to be in a relationship with on the other hand. And the fact is, you want as many people as possible in the I choose to be in a relationship with this person, and as few people as possible in the I have to be in a relationship with this person bucket. The reason is that when you feel like you have to be in a relationship with someone, whether it's a fiance, whether it's someone that you work with, what it means is that you start accepting crappy behavior. And what happens is when you have to be in a relationship with your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your old friend, when you have this person that you feel like I can't not be in a relationship with them, they have a tremendous amount of leeway to treat you poorly. And the sad truth of people is that people are wonderful. I truly believe that people are good, but people oftentimes will treat you as poorly as you let them. And when you have these people that can treat you bad, keep coming back because they're family or because they're an old friend or because you're engaged to them or because you're in a relationship and you don't think you can do better, means that they're going to treat you worse than they might if they were in this bucket, which is we choose to be in a relationship together because we treat each other well. And I know this can be especially when thinking about family, right? You're like, I can't move my family members from the I have to the I choose box. It can be so hard. But the truth is, the more relationships you can get over here, family included, the better your life is going to be and the stronger those relationships will be, because you're not going to treat each other poorly and hang out because you have to. You're going to spend time with each other because you're good. And because you can have improved their relationship if it started over here to the point where you do actually want to spend time with them. So a couple things here. One, there's this mental exercise. There are some people that have the whole freaking world over here, right? They feel like they need everyone to like them. They have to have their coworkers like them. They have to go to this dumb party they don't want to go to. They have to. They do that to themselves in their own head. And if that's you right now, release yourself from that. That is damaging your life. It is creating fake, false relationships. It's creating people who treat you poorly because they can, right? Move them over to here right now. That's just a mental shift. The other thing is that there's sometimes very real constraints in our life, right? You have a job and you have a shit boss. I know that my dad, for instance, growing up, I saw it, right? He got a job at this company and he had a boss that was a terror. Like, this was the kind of guy that my dad would tell me stories. He would make grown men cry in the boardroom. And just for years and years, my dad's a tough guy. I never got broke down to that degree. But I watched it take a toll on him as he felt like to provide for his family, for me and my brother and my sister and my mom, he had to continue to have this job. And it beat him down. And I've seen the effects on him. And he would come home more irritable. He'd be upset. He would be quicker to anger. All of these things have a lasting effect when you feel like I have to have this job or this boss. And what I would encourage you to do with work with other people is to start making very real physical changes in your life so that you can move them to this bucket, right? Start a side hustle, right? Start looking for other jobs. If you have friends in this, get out there, go to meetups, talk to other groups of friends, text people you haven't seen in a while. You need to create other options for yourself so you don't have a tremendous amount of people who can do damage in this bucket, right? You need to make actual physical changes. Everything else in Charisma University will help you with creating those new relationships so that you don't get stuck in those. One quick story here, and I realize this can be very, very tough. I got an email from a guy. He's a young kid. He was, I believe, 17, 18, just about to go to college. He's got an Indian family, and it's very important that he follow traditional roles to his mother. She has groomed him to be a doctor from the day he was born. And he's 18. He doesn't want to be a doctor. He wants to go try to do something in the arts. And that is his calling. That is his passion right now. He has no interest in being a doctor. But his mother has said that if he doesn't go pursue a medical degree, she will literally disown him. And that's the type of decision that we often have to make. He said, what should I do? You know, I've got my mom or this. And I told him, I can't tell you. But what you have to realize is that your mother has forced a choice on you. She has said, you will take me and you will live the life I have chosen for you, or you can live your life and I will not be there. Maybe she'll come around. But that is sometimes the decision people give us, and it sucks to high heaven when they're our family. But you need to not allow that choice to be made for you. You need to go, if you're gonna live the life that your friends or your family, your boss or your mom wants you to live, you need to make that decision consciously at the very least. I'd encourage as many people as possible to get to where you have a support system that will allow you to live that life only with people that you choose to be in a relationship with. But if you need your mom for financial support or for, of course, because she's your mom, that can create some serious tension. I don't have all the answers here, but what I need you guys to do and what you need to do for yourselves is to really see who's in this bucket, right? And who is not treating you well in that bucket. If you've got grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad, and they're all wonderful, fantastic, great. But if you've got people over here that are not treating you well, you need to start doing things mentally and in your own life, in the real world, to allow you to get rid of them, move them to the I'm not in a relationship with them bucket, so that you can start to live a better life. Another thing that you should do, if you know that conflict is coming, right? You know that you're going in and you and your spouse had a fight and it's going to be an argument over who did what and who said what last time. Get the garbage out. And the best way I know how to do this is to free write. By garbage, I mean all of that vitriol that's going to take you, like my friend playing basketball, and is going to make you swear at them, is going to divert you from what you truly want to get out of it, where you just go, fuck you, I don't care, you did this all the time, always. Get that out. The best way I know how is to free write. So if you've got a conflict coming, you're going to have a conversation with someone, just write, just type about it. Oh, 10 minutes, nonstop, get it out. That's the free write. That's going to get the garbage out, and you will feel a weight lift off your shoulders. The second thing to do is to do your homework. Get the chronology of events down. Because what can happen here is that you get into these sort of back and forth of, wait, no. First I said that you shouldn't do that, and then you did. They go, no, you didn't tell me. Get the chronology down pat of exactly what happened. Don't exaggerate to your side. If you made a mistake, acknowledge that. Because the truth is, when people show up and they have these discussions of conflict, oftentimes it's the person who has spent the most amount of time being very, very clear on their position, what they would like, what they should have done, and what they would like the other person to have done, who's going to come out getting that outcome. The person who just shows up and goes, well, you didn't tell me that. And they go, yes, I did. See? Text right here. That person is going to be the one who tends to, not get what they want because they're completely confused as to what actually happened. Do your homework. I'm going to show a quick clip of what it looks like when that does happen next. I believe this is the 10th video in this series, and that's a shame because this is one of the most important, but I had to wait till here to get everything out. The truth is, this is a module about conflict, but what you want to do is avoid 99% of conflicts in your own life. Yes, there are things that you need to bring up that absolutely need to be dealt with, but most of the time they can be nipped in the bud early, and that is with warnings, right? So we've talked about a lot of examples, right? We talked about the woman and my mom who worked together. We talked about dishes. These can all be handled very, very easily without like some sort of showdown if you just say something early. So in the case of the dishes, right? If somebody hasn't done the dishes and you see your roommate and there's dishes in there, shoot them a text. Hey man, just cleaned up some of the dishes. I think some of them were yours. Would you mind doing that next time? Smiley face, right? Look it back to you. Oh, sorry about that. Didn't realize it. Totally cool, right? And if you go out of your way to do it for them the first time, that gesture of goodwill is so strong, you probably won't have to deal with it again. If my mom to this woman, when she started leaving early, had said to her, hey, just wanted to let you know, I'm not sure how they did things in your school, but typically we need to stay late in order to do these things. I know that it can be a pain in the butt. If you do have like some sort of commitment that you need to make, please let me know. But I just wanted to give you a heads up so that it doesn't wind up being a problem with the administration, right? Puts herself on her side, gives her that little warning, is perhaps not making that woman very happy, but is giving the warning early enough that it doesn't get down to those stupid office politics where they both hate each other. She puts it out there. These little warnings early and often are so important. And what's really important to realize is that they happen with a smile on your face. Be completely genuine when you say, it was probably a mistake. I assume you didn't realize it, but there were dishes in the sink. Just wanted to give you a heads up, man. You do not need to drive this home. You do not need to exact some sort of confession from the person. You do not need to exact some sort of written commitment. Just let these warnings happen. And most of the people in your life, once you just say, hey, I didn't super appreciate that. Would you mind not doing it again? Will go so far out of their way to make that not happen. This goes back to what I said. People treat you as bad as you allow them to do so. And if you don't, with just this, they're not going to do it. So that goes to the warnings, right? This also can occur in the moment. And there's videos of this. I can show you one, Robert Downey Jr. we did on the YouTube channel. But someone might be coming at you passive aggressively. And in this case, what you want to do is make your warning real time. And you can do it not as overtly as they are. So if they're being passive aggressive to you, you'll see in the video what Robert Downey Jr. does is the guy's asking him a bunch of questions about his drug past. And he says, is this an interview for a movie? Like he's letting him know. He's saying, hey man, this sounds like we're going off the rails. He gives him a couple warnings and then conflict occurs. He doesn't need the guy and he leaves the room. I'll show you that video next. It's on the YouTube channel if you want to get it. But keep this in mind. These warnings are so critical. It's going to help you avoid the majority of conflict and we won't even have to get into the next section. If you do, which you will in your life, I promise you that, that's what's coming up next, how to actually deal with the tactics of conflict. All right, so now we dive into the bread and butter of actually dealing with the conflict, which is the communication strategy. And this is something that I broadly have termed non-combative communication. And I know that there's a book out there, it's called Nonviolent Communication. I'm not sure if these overlap. I guess that they do, but I'm not actually very familiar with it. Something that I ought to look into. But these have worked for me. I've experimented with them. I've taught them to other people. They work fantastically. And here's what the basic tenets are of this non-combative communication. The whole goal is to put you and the person that you're talking to on the same side, so that rather than going, I want this, and you're pushing against, you just push the same way, and then you can get what you want, right? So the ways that you do this, first off, I statements. You speak in terms of I. A lot of people go, you did that to me, and I can't believe you did that because you made me feel like a jerk. And what you should say is, I felt uncomfortable. I felt like a jerk by the way that I behaved when I saw that you raised your eyes at me, right? You speak in things that are true because your feelings cannot be disputed or refuted. They're your feelings. And you don't say when you were mad at me, you speak to things that you actually witnessed and saw. I saw that you raised your eyebrows, or I saw that you had what looked like a scowl on your face. Those are I statements. We're going to dive deeper into those. The second piece is that you're going to over communicate the things that you want to say. A lot of people, when they get upset, they just go, I'm pissed because you did that. And the truth is, well, I wasn't pissed. I was at first upset when I saw that you did this, and then I got confused by it. And because I was upset and confused and there were a lot of people around, it led me to feel angry. You need to communicate the totality of your feelings, because that is going to be the truth. That's going to be where the person can relate to you. That's so important. Over communicate your feelings. And the third piece is to non-emotionally or unemotionally express your emotions, right? People need to know there are feelings on the line in any sort of conflict. It's not just about a raise or an office. There's feelings of, do you recognize me, right? Are you treating me well? Are you treating me with respect? So when you have emotions that get triggered, right, and you get upset, you need to be able to communicate that without actually being upset as you communicate this. And you need to be able to say that you felt angry without doing it in an angry tone. So just to give you a quick example of all three of these, before diving much, much deeper, there was a situation where my girlfriend was getting messages from someone on the periphery of her family. And just to give you an idea, it was her half-brother's stepdad, right? So you don't need to trace the whole family lineage, but he was sending her messages that started off innocuous, but then started to get more and more creepy, right? He was saying, you know, you look so sexy in that Facebook picture, you look this, that, and the other thing, sexy a bunch of times, that, you know, commenting on her body, completely inappropriate. What started off fine was now like, here is an older guy who is married, who is related to my brother, who I see at Christmas, who has made me feel uncomfortable. And she didn't know what to do, because she's like, he hasn't actually, you know, touched me or crossed the line or said anything. You know, he's got a wife. I don't know what to do about that. I don't want to upset my brother. She had all these feelings about it. And I said what I would tell you, which is start at the beginning and say it all. So she reached out to her brother, and it started like this. Hey, brother, I know that this is kind of out of the blue, but it's been happening often, and I didn't not want to tell you. So your stepdad has been reaching out to me, and he's saying, you know, the word in the last 3 weeks, he said that I'm sexy 3 times, right? That's facts. We're sticking to facts. That made me feel uncomfortable. So now we're unemotionally expressing the emotions. I didn't know what to do because I didn't know how you would react, but not telling you didn't seem like the right thing to do. So I just wanted to reach out. I love you, blah, 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 right? Longer message than that, but you can see in that all those different pieces, she's over communicating, right? She's unemotionally expressing her emotions. She's using I statements and speaking only in facts. She's not saying, so-and-so is being creepy to me, because that's, well, what does that mean? Is he really? Like, that's a matter of opinion. Speak in facts that are irrefutable. I've got the text messages. He said sexy 3 times in 3 weeks. When you speak in facts, what you do is you subvert someone's first reaction to conflict, which is to go, nuh-uh, that didn't happen. Well, that was wrong. That was wrong. When you do all of these things, there's nothing there for them to refute. So now you're already working on the problem. And in fact, he got right back to her and said, thanks for telling me. I really, really appreciate this. I need to have a talk with him about this. You know I got your back. Love you. So these are the 3 broad things, and I want to touch on each and every one of them in greater depth as we continue. So to hammer home those 3 points, right? I statement, speaking only in facts, over communicating, and unemotionally expressing emotion. I just want to tell one more story. I believe that stories are the best way to communicate, at least when it comes to retaining information. So here is one from a few years ago. And I was on a trip to Costa Rica with Ben, my co-founder, and we went out with a huge group of people. It was his company, and they invited a bunch of the dudes who worked there, and they all got to bring a guest. So I went with Ben, some other guy brought his buddy, and a buddy of a buddy was there. And it was a a lot of drink going on. And as this guy got more and more drunk, his name was Tom, he started to become more and more of a nuisance, as people are like to do. And for some reason, Ben's a bigger guy and Tom was not. I think the alcohol made him want to cause issues with the bigger guy because he knew that Ben wasn't going to do anything about it, and maybe it made him feel good. So he kept going around, was just screwing with him, was trying to pants him, was just generally talking down to him, being a jerk, pretending to shove him in the pool with his clothes on. This was not appropriate for the situation. He was doing it to everybody, but Ben seemed to be catching the brunt of it, and nobody was happy with it, but everybody was just biting their tongues. So after it happens a couple times, we're all sitting outside, we're about to go on a bus to go out that evening, and what happens is Tom sits there and he says one other rude thing to Ben as they're sitting across the aisle. Ben looks him straight in the eye and goes, "Tom, I got to be honest with you. I like you a lot more when you're sober." And then just sits there. And Tom is dumbstruck. He could deal if Ben had gone, "Tom, you're being a complete asshole." He had been ready. People were calling him an asshole all night. But he looked at him. He calmly said that, "I don't really like you when you're drunk." That's an unemotional expression of emotion, right? He said "I," which is an I statement. He wasn't saying "you're being a jerk." He said, "This is how I feel." And then later, after Tom adjusts and, Tom apologizes like crazy, even with drunk, this got through to him. They talked about it later. And Ben he expressed how he felt. He said, "So when you did these specific things," he over-communicated the heck out of it. He made it very clear what he didn't like, what was going on, and what he'd like to see differently, and why it made him feel upset. He didn't use power words like "you pissed me off" or "you fucking ruined it." He said, "I feel put down when you say that to me." And coming from a guy who's 215 pounds, he tells you he feels put down. That's totally disarming. And the truth is, we can all do it. People who are being passive aggressive or going after us or trying to be mean, they're steeled against when we strike back, when we go, "You're an ass," or "You're a jerk," or "You're this," or "You're that." They're ready for that. What completely knocks them off guard is when you say, "Hey man, when you say that, I feel put down and it doesn't make me feel good." That honest expression of sadness, of emotion, of an emotion that isn't really considered a power emotion, it isn't combative in and of itself, that knocks people totally off their guard, and you'll be shocked by how quickly people stumble over themselves to apologize. Whereas if you'd said, "Man, you are an asshole," they would get right back in your face because that's what they're prepared for, that's what they've dealt with their whole life. So those three pieces, I can go over them as many times as we can, but I just wanted to hammer it home one more time. I statements. Make sure that you are speaking in facts. That is going to be so, so critical, right? People are going to try to pick apart everything you say. If you're not speaking facts, it's over. Second, over-communicate. This kind of underlies the facts thing, but you want to make sure that that person knows the full extent of your emotions. And third, when you do that, don't be emotional as you do it. You can reveal the fact that it's really the actual power emotions here, the words that do it, are hurt, upset, put down, frustrated, nervous. Right? These are all these words, these states of being that make us feel crappy. They're not power emotions, but when you say them to someone, you're comfortable enough to be vulnerable in a situation like this where you're asking them to correct a behavior. They are so, so powerful when it comes to making them change. So rather than thinking that you need to be pissed, furious, full of rage, these other words are actually going to be the ones that are more honest and get people to change. So in summary, what you want to do with this non-combative communication is to act at all times as if you're being recorded, and you're going to have to watch everything you say and everything you do back in front of your entire family and friend group. And you want to be able to watch this entire clip and go, "I'm proud of everything that I did. I'm proud of my tone of voice, of the way that I looked. I'm not actually ashamed." And none of that, "Oh yeah, well they deserved it." But genuinely you know what? I handled that like a pro. Because if you do that, what we're going to get into next is the fact that you're actually, in all of your communication, setting the standard for how other people will treat you. So it's not just so that you can treat this person like an angel. It's so that you can enforce behavior that says, "Guess what? I'm treating you incredibly well, and I expect the same from you." That's what's coming up next. That's standards. But again, just a sort of overarching mentality is, how would I behave if I was being recorded? And especially think of that when you're on the internet or anywhere in writing. Because guess what? This is being recorded. You're going to have to look at it again in front of other people that maybe don't have the same anger-filled eyes that you have that moment. So always act as if you're being recorded. So I've mentioned standards, and now what I want to do is actually take it to clips that illustrate what happens when you do everything right, you maintain high standards and how you can enforce them, and then what happens when you let the standards of non-combative communication slip, and what happens then. So let's take a look at the clips.
Gangs, not some mom or dad who are working hard. just trying to make a better life for their kids. But even
Mr. President, but that has been a lie. You have been deporting families. You have to continue to stop it.
All right.
I will never thank you for the continued
Okay.
deportation of families.
All right. That's fine. You made your point. Thank you. All right. Okay, I've heard you. Okay. I understand. Listen. Hold on. Here. Can I just say this? All right. I've listened to you. I heard you. I heard you. I heard you. All right. Now I've been respectful. I let you holler. All right. So let me. Nobody's removing you. I've heard you, but you've got to listen to me too. All right. So, and I understand you may disagree.
Who's telling the story of the taxpayer who has to finance this failed, endless project? Nobody is telling that story, but he goes on television to tell the story from the sympathetic point of view. Let's be sorry for drug takers.
I never thought I'd be saying this on this programme, but I think Russell Brand should get a word in. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Peter, I think we want the same thing. I don't think any of us are saying that children should be taking drugs or anyone should be taking drugs. I think what we want to offer is a sensible solution to a difficult problem, and criminalisation and imprisonment isn't working. And it's wonderful to hear this gentleman from the Tory party talking in such compassionate terms. I understand your frustration, mate, but I really think that the techniques and methods that you're talking about are antiquated and belong in another era. That kind of foghorn madness from a bygone. It's not going to help anybody.
There you go again. No reason, just abuse.
You can see how Russell's point begins to break down as soon as he attacks the guy. Up until then, he's listening carefully, he's getting the respect that he wants, but as soon as he goes a bit on the offensive and starts name-calling, that's when the guy shoots back ad hominem and the entire thing breaks down. To contrast that, Obama just listens calmly, doesn't say anything disparaging, doesn't give them any more fuel, and then just says, hey, guess what? I've listened to you, now it's your turn to listen to me. That is the entire goal of standards. We talked about how to set a strong example in the non-combative communication section. Now what we need to do is teach you how to enforce them once you've set the perfect example. The first thing that's very important when it comes to enforcing these standards and getting other people to debate, have arguments, to be in conflict with you in a way that is reasonable, is to make sure that they do not exaggerate or label you. This is things that obviously you can't do to them, but if it starts to happen, it tends to come in the form of always or never. Sometimes you get name calling. You need to shut all of that down in the moment it happens, because what's going to do, it's going to upset you. They're clearly not arguing from a position of trying to get anything better if they're doing this when they're saying you always, you never. That's not the case. They're not being understanding. They're not being rational, and you need to get things back on track. So here's what you do. Say that somebody says, you never think of me. You always go out with your friends. You need to go, hold on. Before we move on, I want to fix this. I want to make you feel better, but we cannot say things that are not true. So when you say that I always go out with my friends and I never think of you, that's flat out not true. So is it more reasonable? Do you agree with this statement? Recently, you have felt like I've been going out with my friends more often, and you've not been feeling like I've been paying much attention to you. And the amazing thing about this is you want to make sure that you're not trying to paint them in a disparaging light. You're trying to be very reasonable. You're trying to accurately represent the way that you think they feel. It forces you to be empathetic. So now you're stepping into their shoes. The second thing is that once you step into their shoes, they're more likely to step into yours. You've laid the example before them. The third thing is that now that you've done this, they're no longer on this tirade of going about how always and never. They've started to calm down. And the fourth thing is that they're following you now. Rather than they're on this side, you're on this side, you notice I said we. So we can't continue to do this if we want to get to a solution. You have paired you guys on the same team. So do this. When people name call, when people do anything, create rules for the both of you, that benefit them as much as they do you, that drive you both towards the goal. This is the whole point of standards. We have to have that nonviolent communication in place at first so that this person, or sorry, non-combative, nonviolent, I don't really care what the title is. I know that there's a book out there. It doesn't matter to me what you want to call it. You have to not make them feel attacked. You have to be on the same side before you can do this. And then what you want to do is make sure that it's very, very clear that you're working towards a goal and you expect them to do the same. So that's step one of standards. Anytime that you see any sort of exaggeration or name calling, full pause, calmly explain that cannot continue, and then you guys can move along with what you're talking about. Sometimes when people are feeling particularly upset or irrational, what they will do is they will alter the scope of the argument. So take the last argument. You'll be talking about how your girlfriend or a friend would like you to pay more attention to them. And then as you're getting to a conclusion here and you're starting to deal and you're saying, you know what, that's not the case. I've been very attentive towards you in these ways and I want you to feel that. So what are we talking about? They will shift the entire argument and change the scope. Well, you didn't do the dishes. Well, with my family, you behaved like this. These are alterations in scope. You need to recognize them for what they are, and you need to shut these down as well. These cannot happen. This is going to derail any sort of movement towards some sort of conclusion, because the truth is when there's an alteration in scope, what's happening is that person is no longer trying to get something beneficial for both of you out of the argument. What they're trying to do is they're trying to win, and you cannot allow that to happen. If there's an argument and somebody is just trying to win, it needs to stop, right? This argument needs to be disbanded. You need to walk away. We're going to talk about when it's appropriate to do that, but to get them back on track, do not let them change the scope. So one way that I like to do that is go, I'm happy to talk about your family, or we've talked about your family before. If you want, we can rehash this again in the future, but right now I want to get somewhere where we both feel good about me and you going out, or you feeling like I'm being attentive to you. So let's talk about that for now and leave your family out of it for the time being. You can always come back to it later, let them know that, but you need to like keep them right on track. You're like the person who is leading this carriage. If you keep it on track long enough, you'll get to a resolution. But there's just so many ways that can be diverted by other things and whims of people and upset feelings. Your job is just to keep it moving in the right direction, and it will arrive there eventually if you do it the right way. So that's the second thing you cannot tolerate, which is an alteration in scope. Obviously, with all of these, you can't do them yourself. If you do it yourself, they're going to shoot right back at you and go, well, you said da-da-da-da, and you're busted, right? Because that's the way that you argue, and that's the way you've implicitly said that they should argue. Don't alter the scope yourself. Do not allow people to do it to you. This is a quick example here. This is Paxman versus Russell Brand. And the big thing here is that this is a common thing. People say, well, why should we listen to you? Why do we have to listen to you? And that is actually what people don't realize is a change in scope. Right there, they're asking you to argue why you are an expert, why people must obey everything that you said. And very cleverly here, Russell Brand says, you don't have to listen to me. What I'm talking about is something else. That is a shift in scope. You're going back to the issue at hand, not why you're a credible expert or not. So watching this next clip, he's going to ask him, why do we have to listen to you given that you don't vote? And see how when Russell answers and just says, basically, you don't have to listen to me, the guy doesn't have any questions. He's kind of stunned, and then he's got to quickly shuffle through his Rolodex in his head to see what he comes up with next.
Well, I don't think it's working very well, Jeremy, given that the planet is being destroyed, given that there is economic disparity of a huge degree. What are you saying? There's no alternative. There's no alternative.
No, I'm not saying
system.
that. I'm saying if you can't be asked to vote, why should we be asked to listen to your political point of view?
You don't have to listen to my political point of view, but it's not that I'm not voting out of apathy. I'm not voting out of absolute indifference and weariness and exhaustion from the lies, treachery, deceit of the political class that has been going on for generations now, and which has now reached fever pitch where we have a disenfranchised, disillusioned, despondent underclass that are not being represented by that political system. So voting for it is tacit complicity with that system, and that's not something I'm offering up.
Well, why don't you change it then?
So you see right there, there's a very clear shift in Paxman's tone. He's going from pointing his finger at him, why don't you do it, to this very, well, why don't you change it then? And that is because Russell basically played jiu-jitsu with him. He used his own force against him. He came at him really strong, said, why do we have to do this? And he said, you don't. And all of a sudden, he's out of attacks there. And so he goes, well, why don't you do this? And now the argument is getting back on course. They're talking about changing the system rather than whether or not Russell is an appropriate person to be spokesman because he doesn't work. That is a very, very sneaky there attempt at changing the scope. Whenever anyone attacks your credibility, they are not attacking and they're not dealing with the issue that you have at hand, whatever argument you're having. And you want to put it not on whether or not you're an expert, but on the issues that you guys are talking about. So that is something to keep an eye out for whenever you have a conflict with anybody. Another thing that may happen if you're in conflict with someone is that as you start to move towards your point, or as you guys actually start to arrive at a resolution, if they're still frustrated, they may get self-righteous and sanctimonious. And I want to show you this next clip. This is a very good example. Again, this is the gun control argument back and forth, Piers Morgan versus this guy, Ben Shapiro. And it starts with a mistake on Ben Shapiro's part. He breaks a standard here. He says that Piers Morgan is standing on the graves of the kids at Stony Hook. And again, that is not true, right? No one is literally standing on any graves. That is an attacking word that does not live up to the standard of, is that 100% factual and true? Is that an I statement? Is that over communicating? Are you expressing any of these emotions? That is untrue, which opens the door for Piers in this clip to get sanctimonious and self-righteous. If this happens, if you make a mistake and you open the door for someone to do that, the way that Ben Shapiro handles this is really excellent. So I want you to watch this next clip and just see how it goes.
But you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show. I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly. What you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves?
So here comes the self-righteousness, right? And this is perhaps warranted, right? This guy said you stood on the graves of 20 kids who were shot at a school. That's not something that you want to do in an argument because it opens you up to this, but see how he handles it.
Of the children that died there. How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program.
So I actually would not have stuck with this tactic of saying you do. I would have gotten very descriptive. What I have seen you do, and now he gets into it. He says, what I've seen you do is you do these specific things. That's what he should do. But more importantly, he doesn't get riled up. He doesn't go, how dare you? He goes, what do you mean, how dare I? How dare you? And then it gets into the shouting match. That is how this gets lost, and the entire goal of some sort of resolution gets completely missed. By keeping his cool, he's able to respond, and you'll see how quickly Piers calms down as well.
Is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, you know, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument, and we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
I've made it very clear what I want to do, which is exactly what Mark Kelly wants to do. And in fact,
so you see, he's now settled down. And in fact, this is oftentimes the case. That self-righteousness that gets riled up, if you say something that isn't attacking someone, is a bit fake. It's a tact. It's a ploy to win this argument. Again, one, we're not trying to win arguments. We're trying to arrive at a resolution. I realize this talk show situation where they pit two guys against each other is meant for entertainment, but there are a lot of things to learn there. One, do not attack people because you're going to open the door for the sanctimonious stuff. Second, if that does happen, the best way to handle that is to very, very clearly with facts say what they do. I have seen you on this program, and it would be even better if you said last week with this specific guy, he said this and you said that. I have seen you demonize the type of people. Now, demonizing is not exactly a fact, but that's a small leap from you said this about him. It's a much larger leap to your standing on the graves of the kids at Stony Hook. So if that happens and they get sanctimonious, keep your cool. Keep it calm. Go back to the issue at hand. Do not follow them into that riled up. They will oftentimes cool down. And if they don't, of course, there's always the opportunity to end the conversation and pick it back up later. So you're not going to let people exaggerate. You're not going to let them label. You're not going to let them get sanctimonious or self-righteous. You're going to keep them on scope to actually solve the problem that you have. Now, what happens if they flat out refuse to do this? They get ridiculous. They start yelling. These are the times where you need to break it off. Because the point of all of this is to drive somewhere where the relationship is better. The conflict is meant, there was already conflict. We're having this conversation to resolve it. Things are supposed to be better after this than they were before it. And if that's not the direction that the person is trying to go, for whatever reason, they're upset, there's something going on in their life, whatever it is, you need to make sure that you just cut it off, right? You've given them these warnings, and this is important. You're going to give them one last warning. So you've let them know, keep it on track, let's keep it on scope, let's do this, let's not get sanctimonious or self-righteous here, but say they continue to do it. What I recommend doing here is giving one final warning, and that is, listen, I want to have this conversation. I really do want to get to a resolution with you that makes you happy and that makes me feel good. But if you continue to speak to me in the tone in which you just talked to me, which feels very aggressive, feels very threatening, and I think if you listen to it, you would probably feel the same way, this conversation can't continue. We have to stop it. We have to not do it now and maybe get back to it later, but I am not going to tolerate that. Again, the way that you do this needs to be as if you are speaking, you're reading the news. It is not full of vitriol or anger. It's not, listen, if you keep talking to me like that, this conversation has to end. We are not going to continue. That's just going to rile them up. You need to be flat, even compassionate in the way that you say this. I want to. I really do. But if you continue to treat me like that, I won't stand for it. This conversation will have to end. So as you continue, be very, very careful of your tone, because I do want to fix this. I don't want to break this conversation off, but I will if that's how it goes. If you do it that way, it's stern, it's very, very direct. There's a clear line, but it's not aggressive. That's your final thing to keep people on track, moving towards a resolution. And I want to show a clip of how this works, but quickly before that, I can tell you a story. There's going to be times where you need to get these standards out beforehand. So sometimes you're in the middle of a conversation with someone, and what happens is that you're talking to them, they're talking to you. You have to let them know, hey, stay on track, hey, do this, hey, do that. If you have an ongoing relationship with someone, there's going to be certain things that are deal breakers for you. Sometimes people who argue in a way that is constantly changing the scope. I have a friend who had a girlfriend. The one thing that he said is, we're in a long distance relationship. If we have issues, you cannot hang up on me. You can say, listen, I need some time to think about this. I don't want to talk right now. Let's talk later. But if you just slam down the phone and don't say anything, that is a no-no for me. You will really upset me, and then we will have serious problems that go beyond what happened. So, of course, I tell you the story because that happened, right? He let her know beforehand. She did that. How did he handle that? This is the importance of standards. She slams down the phone. He's sitting there on the other end. He goes, okay. He's very, very angry. She calls back 5 minutes later. He doesn't answer. One, because he is furious about how she handled it, but two, because he doesn't want to talk to her because she just broke one of his rules. Fine, she calls back a bunch of times. He's still not in the realm to talk to her. The next day, when he finally can, he picks up the phone that she calls, and she immediately starts apologizing. This is the importance and the power of standards. You need to mean them. Don't just draw arbitrary lines. If there's something that truly infuriates you, let the other person know in advance that they should not do that. And second, enforce it. Enforcement doesn't mean yelling, doesn't mean swearing, it doesn't mean cursing. The only way to enforce a standard is to filter, is to remove yourself from the conversation or from the relationship. Now, they did eventually wind up breaking up. It was not just because of that, but because of the type of relationship that they developed where that was even something that could happen. But you need to filter people out if they continually break these rules. If you're treating them well, if you're being non-aggressive in the way that you're speaking to them, but they keep coming at you despite what you're saying, you need to end the conversation and potentially the relationship. This I cannot drive home enough. You're going to get some of these standards out beforehand. Some are going to come out real time. But once somebody's been warned once, twice, 3 times, they continue, it's got to end, or else those warnings don't mean anything. So I mentioned there was a clip. I do want to get to it. It's just Obama enforcing these standards in the way that actually gets people to listen because, again, he demonstrated exactly what he expected of them himself in listening and being so gracious for so long. So take a look at the clip.
I heard you. I heard you. I heard you. All right? Now, I've been respectful. I let you holler. All right? So let me nobody's removing you. I've heard you, but you've got to listen to me too. All right? So, and I understand you may disagree.
You'll notice the whole point of this section is actually, like I said, it's kind of like you're on a path towards resolution, and all that you have to do is keep from getting derailed. Because the truth is, when you can control 4 emotions and 2 people are trying to be empathetic to the other person, the resolution actually comes rather naturally. It's all these diversions that make these conflicts much, much worse than they need to be. So your job, to sum this whole section up, is basically to set a really, really high standard for how you're going to treat one another. That you're going to listen attentively, that you're not going to attack them, that your tone is not going to be more more aggressive in the words you're saying. You're not going to be passive aggressive. You're not going to label. You're going to explain clearly how you feel. You're going to over communicate, and you're going to tell them your feelings in a way that isn't threatening to them. You're not going, I'm so angry at you. You're saying, I felt angry when I saw that blank and blank happen. You do all of that. All that you have to do then is to enforce those standards that you've demonstrated for them. You say, I'm not going to treat like that. I'm not going to treat you like that. I expect you not to treat me like that. Then you'll get to resolution, and we're going to cover a couple of these things. But what you should be able to do at the end of this is just talk, right? You're just talking. You're just putting each other back on track. And at the end of this, you're going to have an idea of what the other person wants. Remember, we're driving towards something. So they're going to say they're your boss. They're going to say, what I would like is that when you send me these files, I need them clearly formatted in a way that is going to be presentable for a client. And you're going to hear that and you're going to go, okay, so it sounds like you'd like me to spend a little bit more time on these. I made a mistake. I was trying to get these to you faster rather than, totally pretty. Would it work for you if I took an extra half an hour to make them look the way that you want them to look? And they'll say probably yes. And if they say no, what you say is, well, I cannot do what you asked me in that time. How would you like me to accomplish that, right? We're going to drive to resolution in the next section. But this whole thing actually will basically take you there. It's kind of the tide is moving in this direction. All you have to do is not get derailed. And to reiterate one last time, that is by setting this high standard, sticking to it yourself, and then really making sure that the other person does as well. And you'll get there, right? Two people who care about each other, who are trying to drive towards a common goal, it's going to be easy. You'll notice the whole point of this section is actually, like I said, it's kind of like you're on a path towards resolution, and all that you have to do is keep from getting derailed. Because the truth is, when you can control 4 emotions and 2 people are trying to be empathetic to the other person, the resolution actually comes rather naturally. It's all these diversions that make these conflicts much, much worse than they need to be. So your job, to sum this whole section up, is basically to set a really, really high standard for how you're going to treat one another, that you're going to listen attentively, that you're not going to attack them, that your tone is not going to be more aggressive in the words you're saying. You're not going to be passive aggressive. You're not going to label. You're going to explain clearly how you feel. You're going to over communicate, and you're going to tell them your feelings in a way that isn't threatening to them. You're not going, I'm so angry at you. You're saying, I felt angry when I saw that blank and blank happen. You do all of that. All that you have to do then is to enforce those standards that you've demonstrated for them. You say, I'm not going to treat like that. I'm not going to treat you like that. I expect you not to treat me like that. Then you'll get to resolution, and we're going to cover a couple of these things. But what you should be able to do at the end of this is just talk, right? You're just talking. You're just putting each other back on track. And at the end of this, you're going to have an idea of what the other person wants. Remember, we're driving towards something. So they're going to say they're your boss. What I would like is that when you send me these files, I need them clearly formatted in a way that is presentable for a client. And you're going to hear that and you're going to go, okay, so it sounds like you'd like me to spend a little bit more time on these. I made a mistake. I was trying to get these to you faster rather than, totally pretty. Would it work for you if I took an extra half an hour to make them look the way that you want them to look? And they'll say probably yes. And if they say no, what you say is, well, I cannot do what you asked me in that time. How would you like me to accomplish that, right? We're going to drive to resolution in the next section. But this whole thing actually will basically take you there. It's kind of the tide is moving in this direction. All you have to do is not get derailed. And to reiterate one last time, that is by setting this high standard, sticking to it yourself, and then really making sure that the other person does as well. And you'll get there, right? 2 people who care about each other, who are trying to drive towards a common goal, it's going to be easy. All right, so now we've arrived at the resolution. And the truth is, like I said, if you've gotten to the resolution, you get to the part here where you've done everything and you've maintained standards, this is going to be the easy part, which is really nice. And you'll know that you've arrived here when you and the person you're speaking to can accurately say what the other person wants and feels to their satisfaction. So when you get to the point where you can go, okay, I think I understand what you're saying. Is it fair to say that you feel X, Y, and Z, and you would like me to do A, B, and C in the future? And they say yes. And you go, okay, do you understand my perspective on this? Do you understand how I feel and what I would like? And they go, yes, you would like da-da-da-da, and you feel like blah, blah, blah. At that point, when you can accurately do that and both say yes to one another, now it's resolution time. This is the easy part where you just set up an action for the future. What is going to change? Sometimes it's as simple as an apology. Typically speaking, you want to be the one who is coming up with options when there's a number of ways to deal with it. When it's something like they'd like you to apologize, perhaps you just apologize. But if it's a situation like the one that I just gave you, which is, okay, you're at work, this is one that I had, I was sending files to my boss as fast as I could, but they weren't like really nicely formatted, and that's not something that I'm good at. I'm not someone who is a detail-oriented person. So I'm sending in files, they're not client ready, he doesn't like it, that upsets him. What do? I want to be the one controlling the options. So at this point I would go, okay, how about this? I see like basically 3 ways we can do this. One is that I can send you it the way that you just described. With you said you wanted the titles like this, you wanted the coloring like this, you wanted me to double check the numbers to make sure they were right. All of that's probably going to take another hour on top of what I've done. So it would take another hour. So from when you request to when I actually get it to you would be that extra hour. We can do that, and it would take a little bit longer, but you'd get it the way that you like. Second is I can keep doing it like I am. You'll get it on time, but it won't have those things, and maybe the client, deals with it, or it's not a problem. And then third is maybe there's someone else here that, can do this faster than me, or who can just do the formatting part, and I can send it over to them, and maybe they can get it to you in a half hour. I'm not sure. But those are the 3 things I think that get you what you want. Which of those do you like the best? And in that way, you're framing the options for only things that are possible for you, things that you're willing and able to do, but you're letting them pick. And that is very, very powerful, because you're framing options that you would be satisfied with any one of those, that you're capable of doing any one of those, and then you're giving them the power to pick. That is so incredibly powerful. It's going to make them feel so much better about how it went, because they've gotten to exert some influence over the end result. And that's going to be basically the way that you want to resolve most of these conflicts. You scope the options and then give them the power to choose. Very, very powerful concept to keep in mind when you do get here to the resolution. I just want to give one more example here, because I think that this lines up really, really well with the mindset of don't change, filter. And I want to hammer home exactly how. So for an example, let's say that you have a friend who is a bad drunk, and you don't like a lot of the things that they do, but maybe one thing you can't stand is that they drive when they're drunk. If they drink and drive, that for you is just unacceptable behavior. And you have this whole conversation, you keep them on track, they try to change the scope, well, you do this. You keep them on track and you get to this point, right? And they've expressed kind of a willingness to change, but you're not certain that they will, and they're unwilling to really commit to anything. Give them freedom at the end, right? With the same thing with options, you're giving a litany of things for them to choose from, and that's what you need to do here. This is not going to be a litany. This is going to be 2, and this is basically what I would say to this person if things are deal breakers in your life, which is, listen, I don't control you. You can do whatever you want. You can drink however much you want. You can handle that however you want. That's your life. I just want you to know that if you drink and drive and it comes to my attention, I am going to end our relationship. I will no longer be your friend. I won't have anything to do with you. So you can make that decision on your own, but I just want you to know what's going to happen. This is very different from what most people do, which is try to tell people you can't do that. If you do that, you're going to be blah, blah, blah. They try to threaten, they try to control. Much, much stronger is just spell out the consequences. List the options. Give people the freedom to choose. Whatever you want to do, it's your life. You've got complete control. But I want you to know beforehand how I'm going to react if you take different sorts of paths here. If you drink and drive, we're done, right? If you do this to me that I don't like, it's over. When you get to that point, you're going to have someone who has all the freedom in the world, but whenever they do make a decision that allows you guys to still be friends, say this person goes, you know what? I've got an issue. I'm going to get it handled. I'm going to go get help. Thank you for this. That relationship will be much stronger for it because they have internalized the reason to do it. They had the freedom to choose, and they chose. When you tell someone, like a kid or a girlfriend, they have to, and they stay, faithful to you, or the kid does the chores because they have to, as soon as you're out of there, as soon as you're not looking, they're going to go back to doing it their way because that was your choice forced onto them. If you give them the freedom and spell out the consequences, they'll make their own decision, and it will actually stick for much longer. So the last thing that I want to touch on here are the 4 kinds of acceptable outcomes to any sort of conflict that you go through all of these steps with. Hopefully a lot of them you're avoiding with warnings so they don't come up. But if you do get down to this point, there's 4 acceptable outcomes and 1 that is straight up unacceptable. And it's unfortunately the one that most people get. So first, the 4 that okay. 4 that okay is agreeing to one person's terms. So in the last example, the person who's drinking and driving, they listen, they go, you know what? You're right. This is a bad behavior. I shouldn't do this. I'm not going to anymore. I'm going to get help. And that's fine. They've agreed to your terms. The second thing that happens is that you guys compromise, right? They find something that is acceptable to them, acceptable to you, isn't perfect for either side, but works. So they're going to keep drinking, but they won't drive, and you don't like it, but you can deal with it as long as they're not driving. That's compromise. Third thing that can happen is that you can agree to disagree. This is unlikely to happen in the case of drinking and driving, but it's very common with religion, politics, things like that, which is basically you're going to have your worldview over here, right? You think that abortion is okay, and this person's going to have their worldview over here. They think that abortion is not and should be illegal, and that's fine. You don't need to talk about it any further. You're not going to convince one another, and it doesn't damage the relationship to feel that way. That's fine. Agree to disagree. The fourth one that is acceptable, and most people leave out, is that you can end the relationship, right? If this person is drinking and driving, and you don't think that's a good thing, which is reasonable in my opinion, you can end that relationship because of it. So many people are unwilling to do this, and I know I've hammered it home. That's the fourth acceptable thing that can happen. The fifth one that I see happen way too often is that you blow up, you yell at each other. This is very common in couples. Doesn't get resolved. You apologize without actually dealing with the underlying issue, and you both just hope that the other person will behave differently. But no actions have been, agreed to. There's been no commitments made. It's just kind of been buried to rise its head once again in a day or a week. Do not do that. If you have issues with someone, you need to get to a clear action plan. And one of those first four things: agree, you need to compromise, agree to disagree, or end it. But do not get to the point where you just bury it, where you're an ostrich with its head in the sand. There are some relationships that are better off over. So do not be the person who is constantly having the same fights with the same person over the same sort of triggers. That's not the way that you want to live your life. Take one of the four things that are good. Hopefully you can get them to move more towards your side with the tools that we've given you. But if not, it might be time to end the relationship.